Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. You are here for the City of Coppers Cove Town Hall on the Street Maintenance Utility, the Let's Fix Our Streets campaign. Few things before we get started. First, tonight's meeting is being recorded. We're recording this meeting so that we can post it on the city's YouTube channel so that those who have not been able to attend any of our town halls can go to those videos and see it. Last night was a residential town hall that we held on the same topic. We recorded that meeting. It is slightly different than the commercial town hall or non-residential town hall that we're doing tonight. And Mr. Scott Osborne, he will talk about some of the details of why it's slightly different. And we're going to go into much more detail on calculations, more than we did last night, because that's more focused on residential. You are in the city council chambers. In these chambers is where city council meets on the first and the third Tuesday of every single month. They meet at 5 o'clock generally for a workshop, but every first and third Tuesday at 6 p.m. city council meets for their regular meeting. There's a difference between the two. The workshop is where city council really just talks about things and they give direction, but they can't take any action, no official votes or anything. At the regular meeting is when they take those official votes and take action on different topics, ordinances, resolutions, projects, those types of things. If you've ever wanted to be involved and know what your local government is doing, and you are demonstrating that tonight by being here, come to those meetings also. However, if you don't have the time, you're not able to attend any of those meetings at that time, you can watch those meetings live on YouTube, on the city's YouTube channel, or after that meeting's over, you can go to YouTube and you can actually watch those meetings after they've occurred as well. That way you know what is happening and what is occurring. We also do a very quick summary. It is a quick summary of all of our council meetings the day after, which then gets posted onto our social media sites as well. And it's a very quick summary. It doesn't go into all the details, just really talks about what council talked about and did, and really just those major points. So, council chambers in here. If you go out these doors where you walked in and you turn right, those are where the restrooms are, and there's a water fountain out there as well, should you need those facilities. Before I go into and introduce Mr. Scott Osborne, there are a couple of other people I want to introduce, and that is your city council. And so I'm going to introduce the council members that are here so that you know that they're here, they're hearing you, they're listening to you, and I'm going to start on my right, your left. First, we have Christina Strophus right back here. Thank you for being here, Christina. And then we have Rita Hogan, and then we have Del Treadway and Vanya Hart. Did I miss any? And thank you, John Hill. Thank you. Sorry, John. I'm just not used to you being all the way over there. So you have 5 council members in here, and just so you know, 4 is a majority when a vote is taken, all right? So you got 5 of them tonight hearing and listening to you. This is a posted town hall meeting. This is not a posted meeting for city council discussion, but they're here listening to you. And I make that a point because in some of our past meetings, there have been council members here, and some of our attendees, such as yourself, have asked, "Council, what do you think about this?" And then council doesn't say anything. They're not being rude. I promise you, they're not being rude, because they would share their thoughts and opinions, but it's not posted as a discussion item for them. We will talk about when that meeting is. Scott's going to share when that specific date, those specific dates are, when council will actually start discussing this and receive the summary of all of these meetings. And you are more than welcome to attend those meetings, because why? Those are public meetings. They're open to the public. So we are going to talk about the Let's Fix Our Streets campaign. I'm going to introduce Mr. Scott Osborne. Scott is our Director of Public Works. He is the technical expert. He has helped put all of this together. He really understands this entire program. He understands the problem. because we wouldn't be talking about this if there wasn't a problem. So Scott, I'm turning it over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, I apologize. I had one more thing. So Scott's going to go through this presentation that we have here. You all have a flyer. There's a QR code on the bottom right of that flyer. Scan it. This presentation, all of the data that Scott's about to go over is at that link. After the presentation, we're going to have our Q&A session. So keep those questions in mind as we're going through the presentation. Write them down if you need to write them down. And then after the presentation, we're going to receive your questions, comments, and then we're going to respond to them as best we can.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. I've seen many of you here in these meetings before. This is actually our 6th of 7 town hall meetings on the Let's Fix Our Street Maintenance Utility Campaign. With that, we've addressed hundreds and hundreds of questions. We've received hundreds and hundreds of comments. And as Ryan stated, those will be provided to City Council prior to them taking any type of official action on this item. That specific schedule entails on October 7th, they will have their first workshop following all of these town hall meetings. In addition to these town hall meetings, Ryan and I have also had numerous meetings with local groups such as Rotaries and Syntex and in various other organizations to really spread the information that will be presented to you tonight. At the end of my presentation, and I promise I will try to go through this fairly rapidly. There are 37 slides, but I do have some pictures on some of them. A lot of you have been here before, you've seen this presentation, so I apologize for the redundancy. But for the benefit of everybody that has not been here, I'm going to go through it similar to what you've heard before, and also due to the fact that we are recording this and putting this out on YouTube so everybody can have an opportunity, even if they're not here, to hear this information from the city's perspective. So with that, I'll get right into it. Once again, my name's Scott Osborne. I'm the Public Works Director here for the City of Coppers Cove. I have been in this position for a little over 5 years. Prior to that, I functioned as a contracted city attorney for the City of Coppers Cove, but I have a background in public works as well throughout the state of Texas. As Public Works Director, I'm over pretty much everything that's not police, fire, and parks. So it consists of solid waste, the water system, the wastewater collection system, the wastewater treatment system, utility administration, fleet, and of course, streets and drainage. And that's why I am basically the one that is going through this in detail, because it's taken basically since I sat down in this position about 4.5 years to go through this process to really assess all these streets, to quantify what you're going to see that I will state is the problem that we're facing as a community, and to vet potential solutions to that problem. And that's, we'll go into great detail about what that analysis looked like and what the results of that really came out to be, and what that looks like today for ultimately for City Council to make some decisions. Okay, so just a brief agenda. We'll go through the transportation network maintenance. We'll go through what's occurred in the past, what is currently occurring, and what the future looks like in terms of maintaining this vast city street network. We'll talk about a couple recent accomplishments, and then I'll highlight a couple pictures about really examples of what else there is to do. There's a lot more to do based on our city's network condition. I'll go into detail about the pavement condition assessment and the street maintenance utility feasibility analysis. Both of those components are really the foundation of what this utility has determined and how it's set up. Both the pavement condition assessment and the maintenance utility feasibility analysis are at that QR code. So you can look at the full analysis that was completed for the city by outside professionals to really assess the network's condition and also to determine the feasibility of a potential program like this. Next steps, we'll get into the public outreach, which is, we're well within that now. I appreciate y'all turning out. That definitely demonstrates this meeting and the attendance at meetings before that the word has gotten out. And obviously, bad news travels fast, and that's why a lot of y'all are here to hear about, okay, what does this mean for me as a business owner, as a resident in the city? What is the potential impact that this brings to the table? And then we'll talk about city council consideration. I highlighted that they'll meet initially on October 7th. That'll be for a workshop meeting, and that's where we'll discuss all of the public comments, all of the questions, potentially revisit some issues that council's already talked about in the past. Because again, we've been talking about this in open meetings with City Council since 2021. So there have been numerous meetings about this very topic that have been out there posted and really not attended very well. But that being said, we're here now. Okay, and then ultimately my goal, the city's goal, is to come up with a plan to start fixing our streets, and you'll see what the significance of that issue is here next. So in the past, really street maintenance progressed from a general fund funded operation to adding a street maintenance division in 2016. In 2016, the voters of the city adopted an allocation, a 1/8 cent of the sales tax allocation, dedicated solely for street maintenance purposes. Again, based on the growing need in this area, in 2023, the voters basically voted to allocate an additional 1/8 cent to street maintenance. That second 1/8 cent was actually previously allocated to the Economic Development Corporation, but it was pulled over to street maintenance based on a variety of different factors. But now that's where it is. So as of 23 into 24, this is now, street maintenance is actually a standalone enterprise fund that is solely funded based off that sales tax allocation. As you see on the slide, the current funding that the city derives out of 1/4 cent of its sales tax is approximately $1.3 million. And this current recently adopted budget going into this next fiscal year 25-26, basic operations and general maintenance expenses for the street maintenance team equate to $1.3 million. These are the basic operations that you see routinely throughout the city. This is your general maintenance, such as filling potholes, doing some crack sealing to preserve the caps of those streets, doing some herbicide vegetation removal along the gutters to prevent those weeds from taking too much root into the base of those streets. This section also provides traffic control when there's accidents or events, parades, things of that nature. And also when winter blesses us, they provide, to the extent we're capable, really the maintenance of those hilly areas with aggregates and attempt to ensure really the safety of the traveling public out there. But in essence, that 1.3, and I misstated it the last time we talked, I said 5.5 people are funded out of that. It's actually 9.5 employees, along with those basic maintenance and operation expenses, take up the entirety of that 1.3 million. What that means, based on what that revenue pulled in and what those expenses are, there are $0 allocated in this next fiscal year for some of the bigger roadway maintenance projects. And when I talk about bigger, excuse me, roadway maintenance projects, I'm talking about when you see the city go out there and reconstruct a roadway like it recently finished Oak Hill and Deer Flat, Suja Lane, Pecan Cove in the recent past, Constitution, and also mill and overlays, which is where we go out. We pull up about an inch or two of the existing asphalt because the structure of that street is still sound underneath with the base. And then we relay fresh asphalt on top to reset the condition of that roadway, provide, that smooth ride, and also to increase the longevity of that roadway section. So the future, that's why we're here tonight. We're talking about, based on these constraints, how do we fund a shortfall that you will see as I get into this. But before that, I want to highlight some recent accomplishments or relatively recent accomplishments. Back in 2023, basically out of the reserves that had been saved up from the sales tax allocation, we were able to move forward with several roadway rehabilitation projects. One of those was a mill and overlay on Robertson, the street right out here. That mill and overlay started back at the stop sign, went through Business 190 all the way up the hill on Robertson to really refresh that surface of that roadway that had fallen into disrepair and was really, really kind of choppy as you were coming down that. Constitution, this is from MLK Jr. up to Business 190. If y'all recall, a couple years ago, it was almost impossible to travel down that street without hitting your head on the top of your car because there were so many bumps in that roadway. With this, we replaced that, and we didn't just place basic asphalt back with flex base. This is actually replaced with concrete, and the reason behind that is this section of town, as you know, sees a lot of that business traffic, that heavy truck traffic with the deliveries for Walmart and H-E-B off RJ3, things of that nature. So that's why this was built to a higher standard, is because we know in the future that'll be a corridor as the Narrows builds out for that heavier truck traffic, and this will stand up for to the test of time. Mentioned Pecan Cove earlier. That's on the left. That was a complete reconstruction of a failed roadway stretch. Walker Boulevard, there was a limited mill and overlay that was recently completed earlier this year. But then I want to highlight much more to do. These are examples. This is one of the worst examples in town. This is the Bradford Oaks subdivision. I'm not sure if a lot of you know where that's at, but if you're going out FM 1113, you take the only left you can take over those railroad tracks before Grimes Crossing. There's a neighborhood back in there. You can see this kind of looks like really like a dirt road, but these are actually all patches. This area is routinely patched by our crews, but this condition is basically a failed condition of a roadway. You see on MLK Jr. Drive, there were a couple patches put in where potholes were starting to develop following alligator cracking. This is not an ideal solution, but this is basically a Band-Aid for now to keep that traffic moving down that roadway in a halfway decent manner. Here's some other examples of much more to do. Here's your downtown streets. You see various cracking, both longitudinal and horizontally. Over here, this is really that recently milled and overlaid area of Robertson on this side of Business 190. But you see some issues that are already starting to form. Here's some longitudinal cracks. believe those have been crack sealed at this point. But the reason behind this, the necessity to, obviously, necessity to properly maintain these roads. Roads don't get better with age unless they're properly maintained. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So, recognizing the system-wide problem that was really generated by the repeated complaints and concerns advanced by a citizen year after year, some through the city routinely conducts citizen surveys to see what are the biggest issues out there you want the city to address. The roadway network came up time and time again. We in Public Works and Streets, we receive, calls every single day about, hey, my road's beat up, I need some work in this area. Hey, we have a patch or a pothole here. So that's being heard. So that led us into, with City Council's direction, okay, let's look into this further. Let's quantify what the extent of that problem is. And that really came down to 21 and 22. The city embarked on a pavement condition assessment. Just so you know, the city's transportation network currently includes approximately 168 center lines of miles. So if you think about a center line, it's just that. It's the mileage going right down the middle of the roadways. So if you're talking about lane miles, you can double that, almost triple that based on the width of that roadway. But 168 center line miles. Back when this study was completed in 22, the city had 153 center line miles. So since that time, we've added 15 additional miles of roadway through basically development, additional residential housing build out, etc. But those 15 additional extra miles that have been added, those come into the city as new roadways. They're built through the development process. They're built in accordance with the city's detailed standards to basically ensure that it's a quality product. As the developer finishes that, they offer that for public dedication. The city then takes its inspections, ensures that it conforms. If it does conform, the city conditionally accepts that infrastructure for that public purpose with a 1-year warranty, which is provided in Chapter 17.5 of the city's ordinances. So again, those miles are new. Those are not the conditions we're talking about. We're talking about older roadways, but ultimately, even these roadways, after a year or two, will need some type of maintenance, and that's that preventative maintenance to keep these roadways in good condition. So that pavement condition assessment was completed to inventory, categorize, and quantify the actual condition of the city's entire street network. In the assessment, let's get into what that showed. This was completed by Lockwood, Andrews, and Newman, or LAN. It's a professional engineering company. It was completed by Hossein Rashani, who has a PhD and basically is a public engineer focused on street maintenance and street pavement design. So he and his team went out to every single street in this city and classified all the defects on every stretch of the roadway and came up with a score of what that condition was. So the objective of the pavement management assessment is really to get over here, the Better Pavement Network. We've gone through this process, optimize the assets, condition assessment, and assess a pavement condition index, or PCI. Understand what the entire system needs. It's really asset management is what it is. Right now, we're talking about optimizing the budget and spending with the hope to ultimately get a better pavement network throughout the city. As part of that assessment, And this comes, once again, directly out of that assessment. You'll see this if you pull that study up at this, that QR code. At that time, back in 21, 22, they went through and they graded our streets, and that was based on, similar to school, you got a A for great to F for a fail. So at that time, 11.5% of the network was in excellent or new condition. It goes down from there, but then you get down to these poor and failed categories. You can see the 35% and the 18%. Over 55% of the city's pavement network at that point was in a poor or failed condition. This was another exhibit completed or contained in that assessment, and it's color coded. So the green up here, these are some of the newer areas of the city that were recently developed, being Creekside, House Creek. You see some areas down here, areas over here. That's the green. The blue, those are relatively new roadways. They're in that good category. The fair is very hard to see, but the highlight is the 55 to 40, which is a poor condition, or below that 40 is considered a failed condition. If you reflect back on that picture I had of Bradford Oaks, that's about a 21 is what that is. So that's beyond that 40, obviously, significantly, so beyond failed at that point. This slide highlights really the correlation between effective pavement maintenance or management and time in the failure to do that effective maintenance over time. See over here, this is the network area based on pavement grade. So once again, it's a little over that 50% mark. This is the repair cost based on pavement grade. So although this only makes up 50% of the city's network, it would take 75%, it accounts for 75% of that cost. And the reason behind that is really very simple. When you think of a roadway, you think of a cap. When that roadway starts out new, that cap is completely sealed. Nothing gets into that. Obviously, traffic and traffic load will eventually start wearing that pavement section down. The first thing you're going to see are longitudinal cracks. If you get to those effectively with what we call a crack seal, and that's where the guys go out on street maintenance, they seal those longitudinal cracks. That extends the life of those areas by about 2 or 3 years before you have to do anything else. That treatment's about 65 cents a square yard. As you, basically move on down that, if you don't get to the crack sealing, you move into really where you're looking at kind of a mill and overlay, and that's to, again, remove that top 1 inch or 2 inch, relay that fresh cap, and rejuvenate the life of that roadway. You can see, based on the costs over here, as we get into a mill and overlay, that 65 cents a square yard really led into substantially more. And again, these are in $21, $22 at the time the assessment was completed. It's more now based on inflation and the lapse of about 3 years of time. If the city, basically, if we see a roadway, all those failed roadways out there, that's when you get down into reconstruction. And what reconstruction is you not only take off all the asphalt, you dig down, you get into the base, you stabilize the subgrade under that base, recompact with fresh base, and put that cap back on. Back then it was about $60 a square yard to do that, so dramatic difference. In today's dollars, it's right around $70 to $80 a square yard. So you can see, based on this correlation, it is cheaper the quicker you get to it and effectively maintain your street network. So back in, again, 22, based on this assessment, they calculated throughout the entire stretch of that 153 miles What would it take to repair everything? That's that figure down here, $52.4 million to actually bring that entire network back up to an excellent condition. Obviously, that's not feasible. $52 million, it's just, it's really insurmountable in a community of this size. We're not on I-35. Obviously, don't have those big commercial generators, things of that nature, but that's out of reach. So as part of that assessment, City Council at the time asked, okay, let's run some scenarios based on the existing funding at the time. Back in 2022, we were sitting at about $1.7 million in funding. At that time, it was derived partially from that sales tax allocation of 1/8 of a cent, and the remainder out of the general fund that basically funds the other type of operations in the city, including public safety, being police, fire, also funds parks, recreation, and the other administrative functions of the city. So back then, they basically projected that based on this 1.7, if we continue to infuse that into the street maintenance year after year, you would see a slide basically from an average of 60.4, which was the average of the network at the time, a 60.4. You would see that slide down to 51.3 in a matter of 5 years. We're sitting at 25 right now, nearly 2026. And I'll get to a slide, but our current assessment is actually 58. So we've dropped 2 overall average percentage points since this assessment was completed. So based on the effort the city has been able to infuse, it hasn't slipped that much, but the slide is prevalent as that maintenance is not completed. So the other scenario City Council asked for was, okay, what would it take to get to a network-wide average of 70 PCI, so at that fair average for the entire network over a 10-year period? Back then in 2022, the assessment calculated that you would need to infuse approximately $4.6 million year after year over the course of a decade to actually turn that trend, that downward trend around and start picking that up and improving the overall street network. As I mentioned, currently we're sitting at a PCI network-wide estimated at 58. We do log and maintain this asset inventory on a daily and weekly basis through my street maintenance department to adequately track every activity we have out there, from crack sealing to the slurry seals and mill and overlays that we have been able to accomplish over the last several years. The reconstructions, for example, Oak Hill, Deer Flat once again. So all of that is factored into that asset management software that brings us up to this. So the conclusions really of that pavement condition assessment is our network needs significantly more work than is currently being provided for through a funding mechanism. The City Council determined at that point and charged staff with, let's vet all the potential solutions to acquire additional funding. So that led into the transportation utility feasibility analysis. Really, the purpose of that was to identify and develop and diversify those dedicated resources to street maintenance. A potential possible solution to really generate additional revenue for this purpose to prevent that further slide. The approach was to allocate transportation system maintenance costs amongst residents and businesses based on the relative amount of vehicle traffic generated from each particular parcel throughout the city, whether that's a residential type use, or a non-residential type use, businesses, churches, schools, etc. The goal is, once again, let's start maintaining our transportation network. So getting into the analysis of what the transportation utility fee study shows, that was completed by NewGen Strategies and Solutions back in 2023, October. This is a summarized or a shortened version of that presentation you'll find at the QR code, but that has a lot of additional detail than what I'm going to go over. So once again, we asked NewGen to evaluate, again, the feasibility of standing up this type of utility. Transportation, it says TUFS, and that's another name for street maintenance utility. It's a transportation utility. Our proven source of additional revenue. This is utilized in various cities throughout the state of Texas. It's utilized right next door in Killeen. It's utilized over in Lampasas, again, to focus and dedicate resources for the purpose of maintaining this aging infrastructure. Under this feasibility analysis, costs, once again, would be allocated to residents based on that relative impact that each of those uses have on the actual system. But unlike general property taxes, these funds are dedicated solely to street maintenance. They can't be used for anything else. There is a draft ordinance that has been included at that QR code. Similar to the drainage utility, these are allocated only for street maintenance. They can't be used to hire more policemen or buy fire trucks or anything like that. It's street maintenance and street maintenance only. So as Ryan highlighted in his introduction, the difference between this presentation and the residential, and I know a lot of you have been in the residential as well, but for the benefit of everybody else, the difference is these next 5 slides are a lot more detailed because non-commercial is calculated differently than single-family residential. Actually, no, they're not calculated differently. The formula is a lot more complicated, and that's spelled out in that assessment, the analysis. So really, it's a 5-step process. First, you start out by access the trip generation data, and that's every parcel generates a specific amount of average traffic generation based on that use. You take simplified land use categories. For example, a church is not going to generate as much as a drive-through fast food place, which is not going to generate as much as a supermarket, etc. But you classify all those uses into what is actually happening at those sites. Identify the non-residential parcels as part of that. Assign those parcels to land use categories. Calculate the total trips for each parcel. This is basically calculated with 2 different factors. One is what's called the trip generation rate, and we'll get into that. Trip generation data, all of this data as far as, okay, what does business A generate based on what that use is and the size of that business? All of that is derived from the Trip Generation Manual, which is a national manual that's developed by transportation engineers that conduct surveys and have for the last several decades about these specific uses for the sole purpose of generating this trip data for analysis such as the one we're looking at. This source of data, this is recognized in the bulk of the street maintenance utilities that you see throughout the state of Texas. Specifically, I know Austin, Corpus Christi, Killeen, Waco, and Abilene rely on this source for that trip generation data. So this, again, calculates the data on the number of vehicle trips generated by these different types of use, and those factors play into the next thing. The land use categories. In total, the ITE, or the Institute of Transportation Engineer Manual uses approximately 167 different type of land uses. In our assessment, those have been further combined based on similar type activities, such as there's not a big difference between a salon and an insurance company, etc. So those are grouped into simplified land use categories for purposes of this calculation. So after they calculated the trip generation for each simplified land use category. This was the average of the land use types in the ITE trip generation manual. So as you can see, this simplified classification, for example, this is the simplified, just hotel, motel use. These are the designations out of the land use, the larger grouping. Hotels basically generate, in essence, the same thing, so they were averaged at that amount. All of these generation rates were expressed relative to those of single-family homes. So the single-family equivalent, you'll hear me talk about that time and again. For purposes of this assessment, one single-family house is said to generate a value of 1. Everything else, all these other calculations are based off that value in this study. So again, identifying those non-residential parcels, residential properties are assumed to have the same number per dwelling. There's only a little bit of difference in residential between a single family house and other residential uses such as a multifamily or a duplex, but the numbers reflect those in the study. And then non-residential trips are estimated using data specific to each property, such as square footage or floor space, because the reason behind that is based on these studies by the ITE, a larger business generates more traffic. So it's based on that size. A gas station with 6 pumps has more trips than a gas station with 2 pumps, and so on and so forth. So as we went through, we identified every non-residential parcel in town and completed this math in the assessment. This map here just shows some of the non-residential parcels, much where you would expect to find them along Business 190 and some of the branching arterials. Each of these parcels were assigned to a land use category, and then total trips were calculated. And I apologize, I know this is a little bit hard to read, but once again, it is in that presentation or analysis at the QR code. But a single family home, this is residential single family. Trip rate equivalent is the single family equivalent, that's 1. A duplex generates less than that 1 because based on these studies, duplexes are typically smaller than a single family house and generate less trips based on the surveys conducted not only across the United States, but in the state of Texas. And similar, you go on down the road, for example, a barber shop. Let me go back, I apologize. A barbershop basically is in a general retail and services classification. This classification generates 3.83 single-family equivalent trips per 1,000 square feet. So if we have 1.4 thousand square feet or 1,400 square foot barbershop, that is estimated to generate 5.4 total trips per day for purposes of this calculation. That feasibility analysis basically identified that there's approximately 34,000 trips, single-family equivalent trips, determined at when this study was completed. Out of those, you basically have a break of about 38% of those trips are generated by our residents out there, and the other 62% are based on non-residential type uses. So at the time, the top 10 estimated trip generators, you had HEB at the top at about 1,169 single-family equivalents. And it goes down from there with the ones you would expect to see, such as Walmart, the bigger businesses in town. Again, I know we keep saying this, but please remember this is a draft only. These fees were calculated for really analysis points. Right now, City Council will not take action on this until October 21st, if at all, in whatever shape that may be in at that time. But back based on the analysis here, as you can see, recall once again, the need was at $4.6 million. At a $10 per single family equivalent, and that's the residential rate, this program would generate approximately $0.6 million per year to be dedicated for this purpose. As City Council got into this, we started looking at potential ways to group basically businesses a little bit closer together to kind of smooth out some of the hills and valleys of really businesses that are very similar. It also, the other benefit is really an administrative type benefit to actually get these functioning in a billing system. Started out with about 5 bands. You've heard numerous different bands. Utility Administration, actually at my direction, a couple weeks back attempted to email every non-residential location in town about what the current draft shows for that location. I know a lot of you have received that, but you see that actually has 11 bands versus the 6 bands that were considered here. So that has evolved over time based on City Council's direction. I anticipate that will continue to evolve as the input from the community, such as yourself, is received and further considered by City Council. So some examples of monthly transportation fees, again, residential. This is obviously not non-residential, and there's not a assessment up here for non-residential, but that information will be provided as comparisons to City Council on October 7th. But this is just examples of where these utilities are found in the state of Texas. Some are like the city, some are not. Obviously, Austin is not Copperas Cove. Copperas Cove is not Austin. City of Killeen, I think they may, I believe they may have increased this, but originally it was $10 starting last year or a couple years ago. So the question is asked every time we have one of these discussions: why don't we just raise taxes for this purpose? NewGen completed an analysis that basically is provided here, and I won't go through this, but in essence, taxes, if we were to raise the ad valorem tax rate, if we are authorized to do that, it actually generates or costs the average citizen more. And really the reason behind that is, unlike this proposed fee where there are currently no exemptions, ad valorem is different. Approximately 20% see an exemption out in the community for ad valorem taxes. So in essence, you have about 80% of the community paying ad valorem, about 20% they're exempted from that. So again, that was the analysis that was completed with this. So the conclusions of that feasibility analysis, the existing funds that are dedicated to this as of 23 and 24, the quarter-cent sales tax exclusively, this is not sufficient to actually adequately maintain this street network and actually turn that curve around to start gaining ground instead of losing ground year after year. These type of utilities. They are established and proven in Texas. This is an equitable way to allocate the cost of maintaining the system to the basically uses that put that corresponding demand on the system. And really the purpose is to properly allocate the true cost of what it takes to effectively maintain a street system in the city of Copperas Cove. Okay, so I've said a lot, but now we're down to the next steps. Public outreach, communication, once again, that's why we're here tonight. We're here to receive your comments, address your questions. If there's a question asked that we don't have an answer to, we will get you an answer. Next step is to move into city council consideration. That's after our last town hall, which is actually here this Saturday at 10 a.m. And again, that's geared towards residential. Let's see. So with that, once again, our goal is to start doing a lot more for our streets. We all drive on these streets. We know the conditions of these streets, and we know they're not getting better without help. So with that, Ryan and myself, we'll start taking questions, and I just ask that you raise your hand. We'll have somebody come around with a microphone. We'll go one by one and hopefully be able to get to all your questions before the end of this.
Turn us on. There we go. All right. So thank you, Scott, for going through the presentation. As Scott said, we are going to do a question and answer session. Scott did say, just raise your hand. We will bring the microphone to you. It's really important that you have the microphone to ask your question, give us your comment, because why we're recording this and we're going to be posting it on YouTube. Mr. Kevin Keller is our Director of Public Relations. He's going to help us out and bring the microphone to you. And Scott and I, we will be sharing in our discussion to respond to each of your questions. So we're going to start with this gentleman right up here in the front, Kevin. Sorry, thank you. You're awesome, right, man.
Hi, my name is Richard. Last time I was here about a week ago when we had the last business meeting, I had a couple of questions. The first one was, how long have we been started collecting that money for the water drainage fee? Do you know how many years you've been doing that?
The drainage fee was approved in the late 1980s. And let's just be really transparent. When it was initiated, it was stated by the governing body in the city, it was supposed to be a temporary fee. And it was only supposed to be temporary for about 5 years. Well, that 5 years came and went, and it was permanent. And the reason it was permanent is because city council then made it permanent. And it's very much like our streets. Drainage facilities, all the drainage ways, they're forever, which means those have to be maintained forever as well.
Right. So do you know how much money you've collected? Because I asked that question last time also for the water drainage fee since that's been enacted.
Right, and I believe I referred you to the city's website where all that information, past budgets are found. For purposes of street maintenance utility, those calculations haven't been made because that's a different utility. But that information is there.
There's a calculation on how much they've collected on the water drainage fee since it's been enacted?
Year after year, you can pull up the budget and look at revenue.
Okay, because it seems like it's a lot of money that was promised to be temporary, and if it wasn't needed and it was only temporary, it seems like a solution to this problem right now.
And I figured that was the premise that you were trying to get to, is that we've collected a lot of money and we haven't done anything with it. The fact is that money annually is collected and spent on maintaining all of our drainage ways. What does that maintenance look like? That includes maintaining the vegetation. That includes clearing out those drainage ways. That also includes doing major drainage projects. And we've got a lot of projects that still have to be done. And so that money wasn't just collected, banked, and then it disappeared. It was only used towards drainage projects and maintenance.
Right, but they said it was temporary, meaning that they didn't need it permanently, but then all of a sudden now we just need it permanently? We can't use it for something else now?
So we weren't here back then when it was initiated. And so I don't know the particulars of what was said. Here's what I've learned in my research, which was a few years ago, and that was the drainage fee was initiated to address very specific drainage issues at that time. Since that time, federal and state law changed where it made it mandatory for local governments to maintain those drainage ways to a specific standard, which we've done, and that's probably the reason why it was made permanent. And I understand we can always go back and say, well, it was said temporary. And you were here last time, and I said the same thing. And that is, the question is, well, can we get a guarantee from the city that this fee will never change, or that it will only be changed every 5 years or every 3 years or something like that? And again, I cannot stand up here and tell anybody that.
Yeah, that wasn't my question at all. Yeah.
I understand that, but we keep going back to temporary. But the city council is the one who initiated that fee through an ordinance. That means only the city council could change it to be a permanent fee as well.
Right.
And the same thing with the street maintenance fee.
Right.
So,
But that's what I'm saying. So if we can enact that money and just start using it for whatever we want to, and now we're just going to use it for whatever we wanted to 5 years after that, you know what I mean? We can use it for whatever we want to now.
no,
You know what I
it can only be used for the specific purpose in which it was authorized.
But everybody's
Drainage
homes and
fee is
yards
only
are
for
still
drainage
flooding.
fees.
All the neighborhoods are still flooding.
But that doesn't mean that drainage is not being, maintenance is not being done. It is. And we can also show you all of the projects. Well, I can't say all the projects because that goes back a long time. I can show you probably the projects over the last decade and a half of major drainage projects that were done with that funding.
See, to me, it seems like all these things, all they are is about how to get more money, and there's not anything going about like how can we use the money that we have to fix the problem.
Oh, and that's another great comment, and then we'll go to somebody else after this. But is it a way to figure out how to increase revenue? Absolutely it is. And that's exactly what we've presented. For a specific purpose to improve and maintain our roadways. And in terms of other money and other funding, City Council just adopted our next year's budget. We go through that process the early part of summer and right into the mid part of summer. City Council goes through about 3 months of dedicated meetings reviewing the budget and all the purpose for all those funds.
So if we
There are
can,
no other funds available to do consistent work on our streets to start improving them.
so why do we continue to take on more roads to take care of
Well,
if we can't afford what we have already?
well, one, if those roads are built in town, a developer has the right to develop their property in the city limits as long as it complies with our subdivision ordinance and our construction standards.
What about the
So-
ones that are being annexed?
So the ones that are being annexed, those are voluntarily annexed. That means the city's not going after them. We're not asking them to come into town. And when those projects have been annexed in the past, it's based on the direction that City Council wants to go, the staff's analysis of that. And I can tell you the last annexation was probably around 3 years ago. The current development that we're actually looking at that could be annexed into the city has been in negotiations for over 3 years because of the concerns that you're talking about. Because City Council wants those new areas, particularly neighborhoods, to be developed with the specific amenities, complying with all of the master plans, such as the major thoroughfare plan, and providing a transportation network that meets the future growth needs for our city.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir, absolutely. So we had a question back here, the lady in the green. I saw you.
Mike is yours.
Big mistake.
Hello, my name is Tara, and my question is, from the very first meeting y'all had, some lady had asked, have you come up with cities our size that are also implementing that fee? Because you can't even compare to clean. So, on commercial, yes.
Yeah, on the
Yeah,
commercial side, yes. So the answer to that is, yes, we've done some research. We have some information. We will present that to City Council on October 7th. I've already been asked, well, why aren't we presenting it in the town halls? Every town hall meeting that we started to when we end needs to be of similar information. So I don't need to present something different at one meeting to another meeting because then I'm just going to get, we're just going to get lots of complaints about that we were hiding information from different meetings. We've been very clear. When we were asked that question, we would get that information and present it to council. So we are getting that information, and it will be presented to council on October 7th. Yes, ma'am. All right, so I think this lady, I saw her hand raised, and we'll go to that gentleman, and then that gentleman.
You were so close.
Hi, my name is Carrie. The city paid approximately $200,000 to NextGen to complete this study. I'm wondering why we hired a consulting company that has one answer to the problem. The answer is the traffic utility fee, not hiring a consulting company that could come up with numerous options. We got no plan to fix the streets. There's no set time frame or what's going to happen first. Literally, we paid $200,000 for a billing model. And I'm just wondering, why weren't other options explored?
Yeah, there have been many options explored in the past. So one of the things Scott didn't talk about is that this has been looked at since 2012, and it was generally this type of program. In terms of other options on what to do, so first the problem is that we need to improve and maintain streets. That's the problem. Then we have to come up with ways to actually repair that work. That was to understand what our inventory of work that needed to be done was. That's what the pavement condition assessment does. It identifies the areas of work that need to be done. Then, once we know what that inventory is and we know what the cost to do all that work is, we need to develop a way to fund that work.
I understand how that works.
Okay, that's great, because those are the different steps that we took. So there is a plan, and there has
So
been a
there's
plan.
a triage list of what's going to happen first the moment this is enacted? Okay, is that on the city website?
Partially. Partially, it is included in the city's adopted capital improvement plan. You'll see the first roadway reconstruction project on there is the Bradford Oaks subdivision. That was the pictures I showed you earlier. The other part of that work plan is actually to address some of the other levels outside of that reconstruction, because you saw reconstruction is the most expensive. So with that, as effective pavement management requires that we get out there, we start doing that work citywide to actually preserve that pavement out there. For example, we do citywide crack sealing to the extent we haven't been able to do in the past with budgets. We go out there, we group together similarly located areas for neighborhood-wide mill and overlay type treatments, which cost less than that, and really to spread that impact further, quicker, to capture some of those roadways that, say, for example, they're teetering on in between those categories. Say they're at the bottom level of fair, without treatment in the next couple of years, they're going to fall into that poor category. Those categories basically correspond to the rehabilitation technique that we have to take to bring those back up. So as you go down, as I showed, it gets more expensive. So the other part outside of the capital improvement plan, outside of those reconstructions and some of the 6 or 7 projects we have identified in there, which have been prioritized by City Council, the other aspect of this is moving forward with some of that citywide rehabilitation for those lower cost treatments to keep those roadways in those levels and prevent them from falling down into other levels. So it's a multi-factored approach, but there is a plan to utilize these funds should they be secured.
And I think the other part of your question was, what are the other options that have been considered? So this is going to be a lengthy answer, okay? Because this is going to combine answers to multiple questions we've received over the town halls to address your one question that you asked. So let's start off with what other solutions do we have without doing anything else to taxes, fees, and just look within the city organization itself. Let's talk about that first. The options that city council has and that we have to move forward with doing street maintenance is right now we could use fund balance. Okay, so that's like the savings account, right? Savings account doesn't last forever. Once you expend it, it's over, and that's what's happened with part of the major projects that Scott kind of briefly talked about. Is there was a savings account from the street maintenance fund from that quarter-cent sales tax that has been fully used. So we could do that. We could deplete down to a 25% requirement on our fund balance in the general fund and not have to implement this fee for maybe a couple of years. There is the option of reducing services, changing services, streamlining services. And we have actually been through numerous years, and I'll say this, I would say it's almost 14 years, because I specifically remember my first year of addressing this, where we started cutting budgets to do exactly that. Streamlining services, reducing services, or really it was personnel at that time, and continuing services to where we are now performing the work that we can with the very least amount of people that we can do it. And I will say that's in all departments, and every department is slipping in terms of providing service. Every department is. And so we could do that, though. We could actually cut services, and we have presented that to City Council in the past. We have presented it in ways of just throwing the door open, say, City Council, what service would you like to cut or reduce so that we can reduce the budget? And we don't receive those recommendations. We've changed it to where, well, let's just look at a percentage reduction across the board, and that way we can reduce the general fund budget overall, and it'll have this impact overall. And some of those things were done. We've gotten very specific to where City Council said, we want to know exactly where we could pinpoint things. And we pinpointed very specific services throughout the entire general fund and said, okay, where do we cut what services do you want to cut? And what services do you want to reduce specifically? Here's the benefit, and then here's the consequence of doing that. None of those changes were made. And most recently, in the last 3 years, we've had this discussion, and I'm about to tell you exactly the reason why we've had this discussion, and that is we have a budget deficit every single year when we start our budget process, and it's usually in the millions of dollars. And so if we have that budget deficit, here are the areas we can cut the budget. It's going to have this impact on helping to reduce the budget. It's a benefit financially. And then it has this consequence from a service perspective. And the government, the local government, is a service agency. All we do is provide service to our residents. That's all we do. So if I refer to you as a customer, I mean it. You are a customer of the local government. Now, you can't opt out of it. I get it. I understand that. But it's a mindset where my expectation is to provide excellent service to our residents, our taxpayers, our customers. And I want everybody that works for our organization to have that mindset. So yes, we can do that. And 75%, I think it's actually a little bit more than 75% of our entire budget are people. So it's the service that's provided. So we've gone through that exercise for many, many years with City Council. And we have truly streamlined all our services to where it's almost a detriment to the team members that eventually come to work with us. And I know everybody, especially all the business owners in here and everybody that works at a job, you work hard. It's your life. It's our life too. We live providing service to you. I live. You know, we have a personal life also, but just like all the rest of you do. But that's the point of what we're trying to do. So let's talk about a few other things. Property tax. Let's just consider a property tax increase. City Council did that last year. And as voters, if you voted last year, you likely saw on the ballot, and hopefully you voted, because that's the number one thing I asked last year. Just go vote. And you did. And I was so proud of our community because we voted more last year than Gatesville. And while Gatesville is a tiny little city, they outvote us regularly. Sorry, I'm getting passionate about it. It bothers me that a little town, I get it, a little town that can outvote us as the size we are. But approved a tax rate increase for the benefit of police and fire for the compensation in which they receive. So thank you, first off. And City Council can do that. City Council can put on the ballot as a tax rate increase to pay for improving our streets. So let's look at the amount that we need. Let's just say it was $2 million instead of $3.6 million or $4.6 million like Scott presented on there. Let's just say it was $2 million. That is a 10-cent increase on the tax rate. We would go up 10 cents on the tax rate. That is a huge increase. But it could go to the voters. I would expect that the voters would vote that down. And rightfully so. 10 cents is a big number. Here's the thing about property tax. 100% of the property tax we receive in the general fund goes only to public safety, police and fire. 100% of the property tax in the general fund goes to police and fire. And it doesn't cover all of the costs for police and fire. So then we have sales tax. Sales tax helps cover a portion of that also. And then the sales tax with franchise tax helps pay for parks and recreation, animal control, code compliance, the library, administration. And so then it finally covers up the budget because that includes user fees also, such as my son plays in youth sports. I pay a fee so he can play in the youth sports program, and it helps cover a portion of the cost for that program, but it doesn't cover all of it again. With property tax specifically, even if it was on the ballot and it was approved, 20% of our population pays no property tax. And that's related to the 100% disabled veterans exemption. Now, we as all voters, and I voted, I remember voting in 2009, it was on the ballot, changed our state constitution to grant that exemption. An exemption to our veterans well-deserved. For our freedom, for my freedom to stand up here and talk with you, for you to be here, that's what that was for. However, the state didn't take into account the fact that Copperscove, and I'm going to add in Killeen and Coryell County and Bell County are right next to Fort Hood, and 20% of our taxpayers are exempt from paying taxes, which means we are providing 100% of service on 80% of the revenue. So we can increase the property tax rate, but only 80% of the population is going to be impacted, which means they're going to pay more than everybody else that still uses the roads. And so I think I received a comment earlier about how is this going to address 100% disabled veterans? They would have to pay it on their utility bill. I'm being very direct and blunt, okay? So they would have to pay it, okay? So let's talk about sales tax now. Well, we already got a quarter cent going to street maintenance. Well, why don't we just increase it by 2 cents or 1 cent? That'll add a lot of money. Agreed, that would add a lot of money based on the fact that we already get $1.3 million based on a quarter cent. Here's the problem. State legislature has specifically said in state law that the maximum tax rate for any jurisdiction, with the exception of a few very specific allowances for other cities, can only be a maximum of 8.25%. You buy anything in Copperas Cove, the sales tax rate is 8.25%. 6.25% goes to the state. 1 cent comes to the city for general fund operations. I kind of talked about that earlier. 1/4 cent goes to street maintenance. 1/4 cent goes to the Economic Development Corporation, and 1/2 cent goes to Coryell County. So we are maxed out. So we can't change our sales tax unless City Council puts it on the ballot to take the other 1/4 cent from the Economic Development Corporation and put it into street maintenance. Again, that only provides $1.3 million, okay? So is it a step in the direction of getting more funding for street maintenance? Absolutely it is. So let's talk about the Economic Development Corporation, because I saw you clap. I understand too. Over the last 20 years of what I've read and seen and watched what the Economic Development Corporation has done, they've not done well. And I'm not telling you anything that I haven't told to them, okay? However, in the last 3 years, they have set a foundation, and they have several companies that are right on the verge of coming here. And I'm talking about major medical facilities. I'm talking about manufacturing facilities. I am talking about major transportation hubs for our community. Are they done yet? No, they're not done yet. And is it frustrating? Absolutely it is. But it's going in the right direction right now. So I understand the sentiment of let's get rid of the EDC, just put it in the street maintenance. I don't think that's a solution for our community. That's really going to damage us. So that's another one. Here, let's talk about grants, because I get the question, well, why don't we apply for grants? And we do. We apply for lots of grants. When we have received a number of grants. We are a part of the Killeen Temple Metropolitan Planning Organization. We are required to be part of it, which is also why we receive millions of dollars in funding for a lot of our transportation projects. The projects must be for improved and expanded transportation networks that are on or directly tied to the state's transportation roadway system. So what are those? US 190, State Highway 9, FM 116, FM 3046. Those are the major TxDOT roadways. FM 1113? 1113. Those are the major TxDOT roadways, and that funding can go towards those roadways. So the bypass was done, US 190 bypass. That was a $44 million project. That was all state and federal dollars. TxDOT is about to let that project to add the 2 additional lanes that many of us have complained that it's not there. Why didn't we just build it? They're about to add those 2 lanes, $111 million to add 2 lanes that they've already put in 2 lanes on. That's the evidence of price increases that have occurred over time. Other grants that we've applied for include the Transportation Alternatives Grant. Now that's primarily for sidewalks and trails. We've applied for those. We're hopefully about to get 2 so that we can add sidewalks that are connected directly with schools. That's the purpose of those. Now we haven't received that grant yet. We're still in that process. But we've also partnered with the BNSF Railroad. We've got several railroad crossings through town. Many of those crossings are terrible. But BNSF actually partnered with us to obtain a grant to study those crossings so that we know what improvements are needed. They're actually paying half of the match for that grant. And one of those improvements that has to come out of that is a recommendation for an overpass or an underpass so that we can eliminate one or two at-grade crossings. Because right now, if there is a train that stops, or God forbid, a disaster that happens on the railroad, we are as a city are in a world of hurt because we have no off-grade crossings with our railroad. So we're trying to achieve that as well. So those are just a few things that we've been asked about other options and solutions. So, okay, other questions? And I think this gentleman back here had a question. Let's get the microphone for you. Yes, sir. You have to use the microphone, please.
Okay. Well, I'm going to speak of the business side of it a little bit. I know you explained some about the sales tax a little bit, but as a business owner, as you know, we have to pay property taxes, sales tax, personal property tax, franchise tax, and in the end of it, even in the insurance, in the end of the year, they do an audit to compare how much you paid taxes, how much you paid on the insurance, and if it's gonna go over, you have to pay more. So with all these taxes, I know you showed, which is you explained that too, about similar city paying the $10 per residential. Why can't you come up with some kind of reasonable number for the business, the same thing, instead of, go by the size, or because it's for a business owner, there is a lot of liabilities, and to get hit with another thing, it's a little bit too much.
Yes, sir. And yes, we have considered that. Yes, City Council has heard very similar comments to that. That'll be part of the summary that we present to council on October 7th. Yes, sir. Yep. I think there is a question back there. Yeah.
I'm David. It's kind of like the government giving rebates on electric vehicles. You gotta afford to go and buy the electric vehicle before you can go and get that rebate. What you're doing to us, we can't even afford to get a new vehicle. So why don't y'all just go, instead of the roads, get something going to give rebates for four-wheel vehicles so we can drive around. You know what I'm saying? Because this is extreme on what we're doing. We're trying to go when we're stealing from the poor and giving to the rich.
Okay. Comment received. Four-wheel vehicles for everybody.
That's what I say.
As far as the comment of stealing from the poor and giving to the rich, I will tell you there is no rich over here. In terms of a city our size, we are, as a city, significantly below the metrics, if we want to start doing comparisons, to any other city and to many businesses. And we lose a lot of employees to those other businesses and those other governments that are within about an hour's drive. They would rather drive a long way than receive the compensation rates that our city can afford to actually pay. So, message received for sure, and I know that City Council heard you as well. We had another question. Oh, right there.
I just wanted to follow up on his comment earlier right here. We're with Sonic, and we have a lot of stores in other cities.
Hey, y'all store looks,
Thank
freshed
you.
up and everything. Thanks.
We put a couple $100,000 into it to make it look good and everything. So we bought them about a year ago, but we have a lot more in Killeen. So for pricing wise, I just pulled up my reports for the Killeen utilities, and for our Sonics in Killeen, our road maintenance fee is $48 a month, not $344 that we got the email on. So just that's kind of the difference in there. So it's a little bit different than the price.
And again, that comparison, that information directly with Killeen, because Killeen is, quite frankly, our closest neighbor, and they've recently adopted this fee. That information will be provided to City Council for that comparison purpose. And obviously, that's very significant for Council when they consider one of the main goals here is we can't destroy the business community despite the fact that we need to fix our streets. So with that, I would expect, obviously I can't guarantee because I don't have a vote on city council, but about 5 of these folks in here do. I really expect a very toned down range when you see the final product. October 7th, you have an opportunity to come to city council and voice your concerns there as well. So I would encourage you to do that, not only on October 7th, but as they get into potential action on October 21st, stay engaged, because what you're pointing out, these are very valid concerns, and it's not something the city is unknowledgeable about, but competition is competition. So with that.
And based on what Scott said, very toned down. I can tell you one of the calculations that Scott and his team have come up with is at or below the comparable rates of what Killeen has right now. So, yeah. Where's our next question? Back there. All right. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Last time we were here, y'all were going to give HEB an exemption of 90%. Is that correct?
It was right at about 81.
25,000. You knocked it down to 2,500.
It was right around 81%. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
But anyway, and so I'm sitting here right now, and I'm looking. This is basically just a tax. I mean, it's not a fee. Call it what it is. It's a tax. And if I pay my city taxes plus this at $600 a month, my total tax bill just for the city of Coppers Cove, not counting school, not counting Cannon, would be right at $12,000. I can't do that. I mean, I can't just keep passing it and passing it. There is a saturation point where people say, you know what? I don't need your service anymore. Goodbye. And, you know, and all I'm asking is I don't mind paying $15, $25, $30. I mean, to me, that's fair. But if you're going to knock HEB down to $2,500, you better be doing the same for everybody in this room.
Comment definitely received, and I think that's definitely a direction we're headed as well.
I mean, I don't mind. I mean, I like Coppers Cove. I don't live in the city. I don't get to vote. But I've been doing business here for 22, 23 years. I love the people. They're great. I mean, I've had, when we shut the water off at least once a year, which we've been doing lately, it affects me tremendous because I lose all my business for a whole week. But I do what I got to do because I'm a part of the community. But this tax is just, it's obnoxious is what it is. And I thank y'all for the time and for the mic rope. God bless y'all. I hope we make the proper decision.
Thanks, sir. All right. Right there, Kevin? All right. Very good.
I know there's been a lot of questions and you guys have had to answer a lot. I just wanted to share maybe a story with you that might help you with this decision. So my daughter, Kylie, had her typical high school. She worked at fast food. She managed to save $5,000. Incredible. She fell in love with nail art while she was in high school and decided she wanted to pursue cosmetology. Okay. Upon graduation, she received gifts from friends and families, probably in the neighborhood of about $6,000. She put that in the bank with her savings from working her job. She went to cosmetology school. She got her cosmetology license. At the end of it, her parents gave her the rest of her $529. Not a lot, $8,000, $9,000. Fast forward, she decides that she wants to open a salon as opposed to going to work somewhere else, to give other people in cosmetology a place where they can go and do what they love as well. Now, everybody knows the challenges of being in business. She just crossed 2 years.
Congratulations.
Major milestone, okay? The coffers are empty. It took every bit of that. It took every bit of creativity that she has to get to that point with her money, okay? She is at break even. She may even make $50 a month right now, but she's not draining her account. She's not taking money from her nails. She's doing okay. if you guys impose this tax on her, I feel like it will kill Independently Beautiful, and it will have a major effect on her and what she's tried to put together. So all I would ask is that you would consider Kylie, you would consider all of our friends, our families, our neighbors, our community when you make this decision.
Thank you, sir. And your city council has definitely heard you. Thank you. Kevin, where are we going next?
Let's go over here to Mr. E.T. So my name's E.T. Ferris, and I'm the general manager of the HEB. And what I'm about to say is certainly not underwritten by our corporate, but it's my personal opinion. Having worked for HEB for 47 years, we count on a vibrant local economy, primarily small businesses. We certainly don't want anybody to have an undue burden of whatever this fee may be. However, I think there may be some solutions. You spoke about, I think it's $3.5 million that we don't receive due to the 100% disabled veterans not paying that. And I think everybody in this room should write and call your local legislators and demand that that money be placed back. The state of Texas will have over a $20 billion surplus this year. They can certainly afford to give that money back. But the way that this is going to happen is everybody has to write in. You got to be heard to make those things happen. And I will echo your sentiments as well. HEB pays very, very well. I've got about 430 people that work for me. And I don't think a week goes by that I don't have one of my partners that is almost homeless, almost unable to put gas in their car, and we pay a great wage. I think that $10 is disproportionately large on the people that make minimum, above minimum. We pay way above minimum. It's not going to impact the people that are making way above that. And so I'd ask that you consider that, and I would ask that if you could consider postponing this until enough people can write to our legislators and demand that they take action. I think it was proposed that it be returned, and then it came off at the last minute, at the last legislature.
Yeah, I can address that in just a
So
moment.
that would be my proposal. And I just want you to know HEB does in no way want a disproportionate less tax than anybody else in this room. That is not. HEB can certainly afford the difference. But I think those are some other considerations that need to be made.
Thank you, sir.
Can
Yes.
I say one other thing too? And I hate to do this, but the EDC, the city of McGregor is going to see a 40% increase in their industrial tax base in 2025. If you haven't driven through McGregor, drive through McGregor, there's a ton of activity. And that activity should be here. We are much closer to Fort Hood. We've got a huge workforce coming out of there that the government would pay for their training, and they're on TRICARE so that the employer doesn't have to pay that benefit. I just think that there's a lot more that the EDC could do that would help in the long term by gaining that industrial base.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, so this past legislative session, Texas legislature, they only meet every 2 years. So every odd year is when they meet to do business. And there was an effort to try and increase the reimbursement to what we call disproportionately impacted cities from that 100% disabled veterans exemption. It did not pass. In fact, what did pass was expanding the eligibility for that relief payment to other communities, which means instead of us getting around $400,000 in return from the state, we're probably going to drop to somewhere around $250,000 to $300,000. It's going to drop even more. And our loss is increasing even more. But let's talk about the general fund just real quick. Street maintenance is one area of service. I kind of briefly mentioned public safety earlier, police and fire. Our police department has not seen an increase in personnel, which means we have not increased police officers on the road in 30 years. But we have tremendously grown in that 30 years. So remember what I talked about? We talked about efficiencies and working to the very minimum, doing the very maximum with the very minimum people. Our police department is a shining star in that, because quite honestly, our crime rate has not increased proportionately to the fact that we haven't increased police officers. And it all goes back to relationships. The fire department, we have not seen an increase in personnel in almost 20 years. And we have grown. And in the fire department, response time, which is the same with police department, is essential. Because if we can't respond in 3 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever the minute count is, and it goes double that, we got serious problems in our community. So it's just that alone, it's not the sole solution, but it's a step in the right direction too. Absolutely. All right, next question is over here.
Sorry to interrupt. I know there's a couple other people that had their hand raised. I'll be quick. I don't want to belabor any points that small business has been talked about. I really love that as a girl dad of a very creative young lady. Well done. But I do think that it needs to be reiterated that, I was thinking about Shakespeare, and, like a rose by any other name, a tax by any other name is still a damn tax. So I also think it's important to understand that an informed, educated voter is a more responsible voter. And if we are saying that we're going to wait until October 7th when this session starts to really get into the nuts and bolts of this tax, and we can't do that at these town halls, why can't we do that via social media? Why do we not have a calculator? We got calculators for every doggone thing. Why can I not go in and put at such and such road, my business, my rentable retail space that I have, and figure out exactly, because I didn't get an email, and I'm not faulting you guys for that. I know there's all sorts of obstacles to that. But why can't we start now instead of waiting until the 7th? If we're not going to do it in the town hall, why can't we do it on social media? Why can't we do it on the city page? So that we've got voters that are informed both on the residential side and on the non-residential side. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you, sir. Agreed.
If I may, sir. We basically, as I stated earlier, we sent out those direct emails to everybody that we had an email account for based on our utility administration database. Obviously, addresses change over time. Some of those we don't have. But I encourage you to reach out to me or a member of my team or Ryan directly. That is how I've been communicating with a lot of folks. I've had folks in my office. If you'd like to come out and sit down, I could walk you through basically this in a little bit greater detail. I have done that with several people. The purpose of this entire process is to inform citizens about what this looks like, what the reason is behind it, how the city came up with these numbers, and really to receive, once again, your input here. And we've heard a lot of very valid points over the last 6 meetings about what should that be proportionately. Obviously, with a $2,500 cap on HEB generating 1,169 trips, why is that discount? Hasn't it been carried throughout those bands? That being said, when City Council originally directed us to move forward with public engagement, we needed 2 specific numbers so we could actually communicate what this looks like at current. We needed that single family equivalent fee, which they established, okay, the maximum we'll even consider would be $10 for the single family equivalent fee. And the maximum impact on any business will be capped at that $2,500, rather than what the analysis shows, $11,679 per month for an HEB. Those were the parameters that we received that direction on. Obviously, we've received a lot of input. We're receiving it here tonight. There's ways to, modify this to get down into some of these issues. At the end of the day, I think the majority of people recognize that we have an issue with our streets. Proper maintenance has not been completed for decades. This will not fix itself. The way roadways work is They start off real good, they start to decline slowly, but once they get to a certain point, they fall off that edge. And they plummet after that, and you get down into those reconstructions. But again, my point is, please reach out to me. I have some business cards. I'll set a stack over on this table. Send me an email. I can get you the specifics of what the current proposal shows. And then again, based on City Council's direction on October 7th, I would anticipate you're going to see something significantly different at that point. Okay?
Okay, other questions? Got a gentleman right here.
Yeah, Stephen, forgive me for not getting up. I've got something I wanted to read here. And everybody hates to be read to. I understand that. But I'm looking at, for the first time, the actual proposed or the draft ordinance for the annual street maintenance utility costs. And it's rather frightening. We're talking about, we see these horrible pictures up there of the state of the roads and streets, but now I'm reading the actual draft, and I know it's a draft, but we all also know I've read other drafts that went into becoming the actual law of the land. This means annual cost of administering, managing, and maintaining the street system, including, without limitation, planning, engineering, development of guidelines, controls and plans, personnel and associated expenses, equipment, materials, and pavement and concrete repairs, preventative maintenance, roadway markings, signage, signalization, system facility construction, debt service, applicable administrative cost reimbursements, and the costs incidental thereto. What a treasure trove of mismanagement of funds, pay raises, increased health costs. I can probably go on and on and on. I just encourage everybody to read this draft and see what it actually says. It's not just filling a pothole. It's much, much more than that. Now, and it's we've talked, recommended that we hire some people. You got 5.5 or whatever your revised number is? 9.5 now? So that's going to be an associated cost. I mean, is that personnel cost going to fill a pothole? The people will, but will the money be there for the material to fill the pothole? I mean, there's just all ways you can massage this data and then come back next year and say, well, the $10, yeah, we need more because we had to hire, X amount of new people and with their costs and associated costs and related things. And we got another planning commission involved and we hired another company to do the engineering, and all of which would be costs that are attributable to this annual street maintenance utility fund, but yet does not reconstruct a street. And I read in another ordinance that the street maintenance utility fund could not be used for new construction or reconstruction. So I'm a little ambivalent on that. I haven't figured out which is the truth on that yet. But I'm doing a crud ton of research, and I hope everybody else in here is. Yeah, the streets need to be fixed. No doubt about that. It's just the method of which, I love the HEB solution to things. I mean, there's a company that inarguably is one of the most successful companies probably not only in the state of Texas, but probably in this nation to begin with. So there seems to be a rapid push. October, let's get this in October. They want to get this stuff in, want to get it passed. We want to start billing people probably in January or within a couple of months. I say we scrap it like I asked last time. We go back to the drawing board. We look at some of these other alternatives. We cap whatever it is, the minimum amount that will never, ever, ever increase on current businesses, current residents, and so that the people moving in or wanting to start a business here will have an opportunity to budget for that. We don't have the opportunity to budget for it. I don't have the opportunity to budget for it. I couldn't budget for it 26 years ago when I opened this business. Now it's going to be something I'm stuck with. But if we say, okay, look, this is the lowest cap. I mean, Killeen started out at $1.70. It's up 488% since 2018. So we're starting out at $10. Add 488% to that, and I think we're building a momentum, and the momentum is driving the issue rather than let's take a breath. Now that the cat's out of the bag, you know, Schrodinger's cat thing, you don't know what's in the bag until you open it, whether it's dead or alive. We scrap it. Get these citizens and business councils to work with city council. Look at the state for the 100% veterans exemption. Look at what CCISD is wanting to add to our tax bill. Look what County of Coryell wants to add. This is not just an echo chamber bubble here. This is not just street maintenance utility fund. I mean, I've already added this stuff up. You know, you can nickel and dime people to death. Again, I think I said last meeting, this is a death by 1,000 cuts. This is only one of them. Everyone in here who lives in this county or does business in this city is going to have to contend with the CCISD debacle. They're going to have to deal with the Coryell County debacle. They're going to have to deal with the city tax debacle. They're going to have to deal. It's just exasperating. And cannons to the right of me, cannons to the left of me, stormed at with shot and shell. Bravely we ride and well into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell. Rode these 510 entities that compromise the business, non-residential entities in Copperas Cove. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. So in terms of overall impact, it is quite overwhelming. And it's all we're talking about is street maintenance right now. But just as a business provides a specific service to its customers, local government provides very specific services to its residents, its taxpayers, its customers. And the services we provide are greatly varied across the board of the different services. And you're right, Coryell County, governmental taxing entity. School district, governmental taxing entity. CTC, governmental taxing entity. City of Copperas Cove, governmental taxing entity. And we all have areas where we, to an extent, intertwine and we provide service to the same types of customers. Some don't even receive services from those entities. Some don't. Some do. Some receive more services. And I would equate it very similar to your customers. Your customers receive service from other businesses here in town. And yes, there should be some level of coordination amongst governmental entities because it impacts everybody. And I would just ask, you know, I'm a business consumer also. I consume from your businesses. And I've paid the increased rates at those businesses, just like everybody else in this house and everybody else in our city. And all I would ask the question is, because it's well placed, is what businesses are coordinating with other businesses on what their adjustments are? And it's just a question, okay? And it's not at all. But here's what I will say. Mismanagement of funds is a very inaccurate statement. And I can understand. I do not stand up here and say we have no mismanagement whatsoever. I can't do that. But I can tell you as a general rule and an overarching consideration, the city of Copperas Cove is not mismanaged financially. And there are so many checks with a government entity. He already left. The gentleman back there talked about, you know, having to do an audit at the end of the year. For local governments, we have numerous audits that we've got to go through. And thankfully, we publish all that information to the entire world. And so if there are very specific concerns that you have with mismanagement, come meet with me. come meet with me and my financial team. We will sit down. We will go over that information. We are not here to hide anything. That's why we're having these town hall meetings. And I know you said the momentum is driving this. It's the issue that's driving the momentum. And it's been discussed for over a decade at this point. And I understand the perception that, oh, here we are, we're doing town halls and we're about to implement this. I get that. But I've been a resident here for 14 years, and I honestly have not complained greatly about the condition of my road. So I've enjoyed the benefit of not having to pay for the improvement or the maintenance, significant maintenance of the roads that I drive on every single day. At some point, and I know some people have or don't like this, but at some point we've got to do something in our city. And if it's not now, it's not. City council can say, we're done. We're not proceeding with this. And if they say that, I'm going to say, okay, we're going to do what we can with what we have. And we're going to keep doing that. And we're going to keep doing it. I don't want to push this off to the next generation. And I'm speaking from my heart now. I don't want to push this off to the next generation because my children maybe live here for decades beyond me. But if we do, we do. And that's the benefit and the challenge that we are dealing with now as well. So, next question. Yes.
I was just concerned about the drainage. You said it was the utilities and the drainage, right? So if we fix the streets, is the drainage gonna? Are we gonna come back and tear everything up from that? And I have one more question after that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Could you clarify what that question was?
If we fix our streets,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
then somebody comes back and says, "Well, we need to put more drains throughout the city because everywhere is flooding," and are we going to tear up the streets to do that after we pay for the streets
Right,
to
and
get fixed?
that's a very valid concern. Another similar concern is, okay, are we going to fix the streets without actually addressing the other infrastructure? So that could be drainage, that could be the water lines, the wastewater collection lines. Our process in Public Works is we look at and we prioritize repairs, rehabilitation, and replacement of all assets. And that's water, that's wastewater collection, that is drainage improvement projects. We take all of those and compare the timing of when those are coming into play. Our intent is not to fix a roadway and then go tear it up to pull out a 50-year-old water line just to redo that. That makes no sense. It's obviously inefficient, costs more money. That is the approach we take in Public Works. Again, I would refer this group to the capital improvement plan. The city adopts a 5-year capital improvement plan every year as part of its budget. We currently have the 2026 through 2030 capital improvement plan, which has all of these projects. And it's not only for streets, it's not only for drainage, but it's water, it's wastewater treatment, it's the facilities, the potential things that police need at some point, our parks and rec. All of those projected projects are in there. But to directly address your question, that is not our intent because that would be foolish.
Okay, good. And what about the Oak Springs Road gravel that got put down recently? They put gravel down and didn't do anything else with it. They just...
Can you tell me where Oak Springs is?
It's right out off of 1113.
It's in the county.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's different.
Yeah, it's not the city.
Okay.
So I'm unsure. I would assume they probably
I would just
put
hate for
down,
something like that to happen in the city or something like that. They just, wasted a whole bunch of gravel out.
Did they put chip seal down? Is it like black rocks? It's a chip seal. So that's right. And it sounds like they didn't put enough tack on it to actually get it to stay.
I would like to ask a quick question. On the draft, the 9-page draft that y'all put out, I think it was last week, there's one section that lists the commercial, non-residential facilities.
Yes,
and then
ma'am.
it has a certain rate. And
Yes,
then
ma'am.
it has square footage.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the first column dollars, like, for example, $9.26, 9.26 per 1,000 square foot, $3.76 per 1,000 square foot. Can y'all explain that just a little bit?
Yeah, the first column that you're seeing, the first column is the type of business, so obviously the big description over there.
Right.
The second column you're seeing is the single-family equivalent trip generation rate. So what that rate is this particular use per whatever is in that last column per unit. So typically it's 1,000 square foot. Per 1,000 square foot, that use, for example, general retail, I believe it's at 3.73 single-family equivalents per 1,000 feet. So to get to the actual amount, you make that multiplication. There is a formula provided within that ordinance that sets out what that formula is to get to that actual amount. One of the things, once again, City Council provided that direction on was the top end of that single-family equivalent fee, and that's for these purposes, for this discussion, set at $10. So that becomes the rate that are multiplied by the trips, multiplied by that unit to come up with a number of total trips generated. Those total trips generated, say, after you do those calculations, you come up with, say, 80, for example, total single-family equivalent trips. Those trips, or that quantity, are then placed into bands, which are also in the ordinance, that provide what that band is and what that corresponding equivalent will be. So it's,
Okay,
yes.
where is the formula that gives me the price per month that it would be?
You would have to do the calculation again. It's based on that $10. But once again, as I recommended to somebody else, I have some business cards. If you want to
Okay.
reach out directly, I can make those calculations for you and show you what that's going to be.
Okay.
Okay. But it's based on those formulas in there and that $10 single-family equivalent fee.
I can tell you what it is because I've done the calculations for gym kicks. $10 could be $348 a month, could be $948 a month.
I need to know it for our business.
Yes, ma'am. And that's what I'd like you to do is reach out to me with your account number.
That's what I'm saying. This is not a small fee. Your nail salon, $40 to $150, depending on how they classify you.
That's not fair to any of these businesses.
It's not a small fee. And it's not equitable when the city buses and the city trucks and the city garbage trucks that do a majority of the damage to the streets are exempt from it as well. And you talk about mismanagement, you talk about how they're not getting paid enough. I find that very disingenuous when the average median income, probably for most of these business owners, is $32,000 in Cove. And you have 2 Parks and Rec employees that are making a combined income of almost $200,000 a year. The city employees are not getting paid enough. Us business owners, we're not making enough because we are being taxed to death. And we cannot take on a $500 a month bill. We can't keep taking these on. And we certainly can't just take it and be like, it's like the healthcare bill where Nancy Pelosi is like, we'll know what it is when we pass it. That's how this feels. You'll know what it is when we pass it, October 7th. Don't worry, we'll let you know what it is. Hopefully you'll fit into the right band. Hopefully your nail salon's not qualified as general retail and it's actually personal services. This is, I'm sorry, this is just very, very upsetting. We are not prepared to be able to take on a bill like that.
Yes, ma'am. You need that too?
He's doing that. Okay, do we have another question, comment over there? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My name is Jeff. I was going to comment on what Scott was just saying. If he went back and listened to what he just said to that young lady over there about she couldn't figure out her thing, that is the most complicated formula I have ever heard in my entire life to come up with a fee. So nobody understands it. There's no simple way to figure it out. When you guys showed the comparable cities that are around us that have this tough, you didn't give anything about you gave a residential side, and we're all here for the commercial side. You didn't give us any indication. How much does Clean charge? That gentleman over there with the Sonic said it was $48. In Copper's Cove, it's going to be $600, $700, $800, $900 a month for him. You know, that's not fair. It's just not fair.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to hide the information, basically. You guys know what Clean's paying. You guys know what College Station is paying because you have it up there. But you don't give us an idea what they're paying on the commercial side.
So as the question was asked earlier, do we have that information? Have we done that analysis? We are doing that. We've been asked that question. We've received the same comment. And each of those different cities does it differently. So, hey, hang on, everybody. Hey, hang on. Okay, so yeah, so we've been asked that question. We are gathering that information now, but every city does their commercial rates differently. Let's talk about land passes. It's the easiest one. It's a straight $7 fee across all customers. Large businesses, single family residents, duplexes, apartments, $7. Killeen does it differently. Waco does it differently. College Station does it differently. So we have to go through each of their ordinances, follow their calculations, and there is a formula in our ordinance. And while Scott may not have explained it well, the ordinance is very clear on what that formula is. And I understand the explanation may not have gone over very well, and I apologize for that. But the ordinance is actually really clear, and I encourage you to look at it. And if you want to stick around, we can actually pull it up and we'll show you the ordinance on the screen after we get through our questioning. So thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. Microphone. Thank you.
Trust me. my
No,
husband
but
tells
we're
me.
recording this, so we need it on the
So
microphone.
anyway, that Bradford, what's it called again?
Bradford Oaks?
Yeah, Bradford Oaks. So when exactly did that come part of the city?
I want to say that was in the mid-2000s
Okay.
time
okay.
period.
So the opinion is that that's one of the roads that needs to be fixed first, right?
Well, it is one of the poorest roads in the city.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So mind you, that was really from like the country area, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So we all know you drive out in these country areas and these old little housing areas, those roads suck. There's no terms, there's nothing. They're just bad. So I guarantee when y'all brought that in, it was already bad. So y'all took this long to decide that needed to be fixed. Now my question is, what makes that a priority? It has maybe 10 houses on there? Yeah, it's a dead end. Let's not forget, it is a dead end street.
Mm-hmm.
So why is that street going to be more important than, let's say, a street that I might live on that has like, I don't know how many houses, 20 houses, 30 houses. So I don't, what are you all are factoring in that determines which streets are going to get hit first?
Well, so the effort is we need to do the lowest level maintenance. Remember that chart that had the square footage cost per maintenance effort? We need to hit a lot of those lower efforts so that we can extend the life of those roads. The Bradford Oaks type of examples, those are those really large projects that, yeah, we need to work on. But very specifically, let's talk about Bradford Oaks. Yeah, there may be 20, 30 homes that are back in that area. I don't know, right? But whether there's 10 homes, 20 homes, what it is it matters in terms of service. But if we have such a difficulty trying to get back there to respond to them, and they're paying city taxes and they're paying the fee also, they expect their road to be improved as well. Now, why did it take so long? I can't really speak to that directly because it's really city council deciding these are the budgets from management making recommendations on, hey, we need to look at these roads. City council, do you agree with these roads on doing it? But remember, over the last couple of decades, we haven't done major road work at all. So Bradford Oaks was annexed into the city, and I think it was one of the last involuntarily annexed areas. So unfortunately, they didn't have a choice on being annexed. And why it was annexed, I don't know. Okay, all right. And well, we definitely provide city services out there. We don't provide water because that's provided by Topsy Water Supply Corporation. It's not Topsy Water Supply Corporation. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, all right, very good. But in terms of why it wasn't done, I can't speak to the history of the leadership at that time, why it wasn't done. Here's what I can say is now we've been working through this whole process, and yes, as I said earlier, we recognize there's been an issue, there's a problem, there's been a lack of maintenance that's done, and if city council passes this and it's $1 fee, well, whatever that revenue is, we're going to do the maximum that we can with that. But if city council makes it a $5 fee, well, whatever that revenue is, we're going to do the maximum that we can with that. But if it goes away completely, okay. The revenue and resources we do have, we're going to do the maximum work we can do. It doesn't mean we're going to replace Bradford Oaks. I can almost guarantee that, unless there becomes a life safety issue. And that's one of the things that I don't want to see, because that's really going to force us to do it instead of us being strategic, planning it out, and proactively trying to improve those roads. I understand the frustration. I've talked to many of the residents in that area. They didn't like being annexed anyway. And the state legislature has fixed that because cities can't involuntarily annex for the most part anymore. So. Absolutely, they will. Well, you can call me what you want, but I know the services we provide. Yes, sir.
Okay, at the risk of having my future covered Dodge Ram truck thrown rocks at, I'm going to ask a question here because I feel like if we just keep kicking this can down the road, what's a $500 tax may become a $1,500 tax. And the roads that I have to drive on that are roughly equivalent to the surface of the moon are just going to get worse, right? So I guess the real question is, we figured out in 2023 that we needed to do something. Why is it taking us 2 years to get to the point where we're having these kinds of conversations that are pissing off 3/4 of the city? I mean, what did we do in the last 2 years? Instead of in October of 2023 putting something out to the city where we could have been 2 years potentially down the road of fixing some of these problems.
Well, I can tell you that we have been doing some of those major road works since 2023. This year was the last year that we'll be able to do them right now based on funding in terms of putting the information out.
I'm not arguing about the
Okay.
work.
Yeah,
I'm talking about implementing something that...
We didn't have this in 2023.
Right.
But we had a pavement condition assessment in 2022. And all of this information, as we've been talking about this incrementally, has been published not only on the city's website and government. Okay, you probably don't go there or you don't go there often. And I understand it's a government website. It's not sexy and exciting, but it has been published by the media numerous times. Every time we talk about this, I can tell you, they love to write about it. One, it's newsworthy. Two, it's kind of, what people unfortunately enjoy reading is the things that's going to really grab attention and cause aggravation. But I'll tell you, with the media, we've been very clear and open with them. Anytime they've asked a question, we've shared it with them. If you're asking, why didn't we push out a flyer to all of our customers? Why didn't we send out an email to all of our customers? We could do that. We could. But here's my position. If we're going to do it for that, then we should do it for every single service we're providing in the city. Because this right now is upsetting you. But I can tell you, we switched our officiating in our sports programs, and it infuriated all the players and parents and refs when we switched. And we went through several meetings. We went through several education processes. At the beginning, we did that. But we still went through the same frustration. So I understand and receive your comment. If we're going to do that, I need more help from Kevin's department to send that information out. I need more help from the utility admin department to push that stuff out, because it doesn't just happen.
I'm not talking about the advertising. I'm not talking about doing the physical work. I'm talking about, why are we waiting 2 years to start talking about a real solution, as opposed to just trying to put another Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound, which is what apparently, I mean, I've been living here since 2008, and that's kind of sort of what we've been doing since 2008, is just we keep slapping Band-Aids and throwing more blood into what is probably a dying body.
And I understand your comment, but we've been talking about this. Now, if we haven't held town hall meetings, and if you haven't read it, you haven't watched what council is talking about, that's something that even we should be more aware of. That's something that you should be more aware of. You vote your council into office. They represent you. And so following what they do, holding them accountable, just like I have 8 bosses that hold me accountable, you get to hold those 8 people accountable because you vote them into office. Other question, comments? Okay, I really want to say thank you for being here. You know, a lot of emotions. It's frustrating. As I said, City Council has been receiving all of these comments. They will have a meeting on October 7th to actually receive a summary of the town halls, the comments, the concerns, the recommendations that have been given. City Council will then provide direction at that time what they'd like to do. And we've received a lot of recommendations and comments, and they will get all of that. They've been here for most of these meetings. We do have one more town hall meeting this Saturday at 10 a.m. at this location. It is a residential town hall. So if you have interest or other people have interest in coming, please come. We will not get into great detail on commercial. And as Scott said, if you want to have a more detailed, in-depth discussion about the fee, its calculations, the methodology, all that stuff, please contact him. He will definitely sit down with you. Thank you. Have a great evening. Be safe, and God bless you.